Alrighty, it's been a couple of weeks since I posted my last video, so this is going to be a bit of a follow-up to that art video. And to begin, I'm going to show some of the drawings that I did this year in 2017 as part of my intermediate drawing class. So I thought to begin, let's look at some new Sharpie drawings, and while I'm at it, I'm going to give you a few tips on how to be successful in the art world, as well as being successful with these Sharpie drawings. Now the first one we have is an invented landscape scene that I did on watercolor paper with Sharpies, which, by the way, don't do Sharpies on watercolor paper. It is just a pain. Second, I would recommend using something like cardstock. And as you can see here, you don't really need Copic markers to achieve a result like this. All you need to do is just keep blending the darker tones with the lighter tones. Second, let's take a splash under the sea with Mermaid. Yeah, I know there's a little bit of overlap in this one, but as you can see, like with the last one, you can blend darker tones with lighter tones. I'm sure you probably remember this one from the last video. It was just outside my window. This one, however, is a recreation of my old childhood home back in Olathe, Kansas, which, unfortunately, the home itself is not in the best state, as it once was in the past. This one is a Halloween theme that I like to call Sweet Massacre. Of course, Griffith's lava, like last time. A gelatin mold, which also shows you don't need Copics to achieve a very well-blended result, as you can see on the top of the gelatin mold and in the background. This was one of my earlier Sharpie drawings, and as you can see, the proportions are really wonky. Those are some other bad ones. Another earlier foot drawing, again, bad proportions. This one was actually entered into an art show not too long ago. I call it It Came From Below. Candy, anyone? Trick or treat. This one was part of a Greek mythology series that I did, which another two I'll show you later on in the video. Another early hand drawing. And this one is actually a callback to Picasso's style of painting called Cubism, where basically you're breaking down a shape into its largest forms, simplest forms, and messing with the perspective. This one's one of my favorites, as it's just a mushroom being used as an umbrella after a rainstorm. Again, don't use Sharpies with watercolor paper. It does not achieve the best result. This one was just done randomly. I'm not going to explain any further than that. This one I like to call Owl in Hell. And who can forget the ever-lovable Cuphead and Mugman. Man, that game is hard, but it's so addicting. Another landscape scene. An early version of a later Sharpie drawing where I had to combine a kitten, a bunny, and a sunflower. This was an earlier version that I actually messed up on. Oh, 1 second. This one is actually outside my dorm room. This one is actually an image of said dorm room. One of my earlier hand drawings, which unfortunately got water damaged. And an unfinished version of a snake. So now next we are going to take a look at some of my bigger drawings from in the class itself, as well as my 2 drawings for my final exam. Oh, before we move on to the next one, there is one Sharpie drawing that I missed. The improved version of the kitten, bunny, and sunflower. Well, including a donkey. Which is actually something I did for a Sharpie assignment, and it's actually the favorite of my instructor. Now, the first 2 in this list are a couple of watercolor drawings I did of the outside of my school. And then, continuing the watercolor trend, are just some gesture drawings. Now, for this assignment, we actually projected videos onto models and had to draw off of them. as quickly as we could. And I've been told these are actually my strongest drawings out of this whole set. This one's actually my favorite because it has the best proportions, the best foreshortening. This one, however, it looks like a rainbow threw up all over it. Now let's move into a pencil drawing that I did to show tonal variation. Yeah, it's small. I had a problem doing them with that. That was because I was scared of getting the proportions right. And here's another one. These were a couple of the model we used. Then here's another one of those watercolor drawings where we projected video onto scenery. And once again with the people. And lift this in here. More watercolor. If you can't tell, I'm pretty good with watercolor. Yeah, let's not show that one. These are concept sketches of the earlier version. As you can see, they're very gestural, very loose. This was actually my first one that I did for intermediate drawing. As you can see, I drew very small. Concept sketch, foreshortening practice. This was actually, what was it? This was actually using erasers to draw, which, if you didn't know, you can actually use an eraser to chip away at pitch black charcoal or black paper. This was an attempt at oil pastels. This was, that one's hard to explain. We basically had to imagine a scene with the model. This is a concept sketch of the previous drawing. This one went with a Greek mythology theme, which I will show you later on, which has to do with my final drawing. Another one of the watercolor. An attempt at foreshortening and drawing from memory. As you can see, my skills with proportion, foreshortening, and all that really improved as the semester progressed. Yeah, I'm not going to explain this one. I call this one the Pantheon. And this is another watercolor drawing that I did around the same time I did those two sceneries. This was to get my ideas down for my final drawing, which once again you'll see later on in the video. And these are just line drawings that I did in the science building. And now let's move on to the main event after we clean this up, of course, and show you the two drawings I did for my final exam. Now let's go. Now, as I mentioned previously, I decided to focus on Greek mythology for my theme for my final drawing. So I decided to do two portraits. One is a watercolor and Sharpie drawing of Zeus, and the other is an oil pastel drawing of Hera, Zeus's wife, who we would constantly cheat on. Yeah, as you can see in Hera's expression. Now, the critiques I got on these were actually pretty understandable, such as Zeus's torso being a tad elongated, and Hera just needs more detail. Plus, there's a little bit of a disconnect between the two works, which I can understand, and I'll continue to improve these on as I progress, and I will be glad to keep them updated on them. Now, this brings the video to an end. This is Austin Myers of Reviews and Retrospectives and the editor of Random Antics. So if you like this video, please feel free to give a thumbs up, subscribe, and like both channels. And I'll see you next time.